Okay, you guys all come up here. I'm going to go ahead and just let you guys do the introductions yourselves because I think that's just going to be a much better way to do it. So this is a panel that is on contributing to Bitcoin Core. We're going to cover a couple of different angles on that, and I guess we'll start with the intros. And you're seated to my left, so let's do this, Ben.
I've been the Carman. I haven't contributed core in quite a while, but most of my PRs are rejected for things that people don't like. But I do have a few good commits in there. Yeah.
I'm Peter Todd. I've contributed to Bitcoin Core enough that Craig is suing me in 2 separate lawsuits. That's a very low bar, by the way.
Are you a core contributor if you haven't been sued by him?
Let me ask my lawyer first. And other than that, in reality, I tend to mostly do writing. That's actually probably my main way of convincing people to go and change code. So I do much of that. Of course, I'm also known for open timestamps and getting full RBF to 80% of hash power.
I'm Antoine Poinsot. I'm the co-founder of Without Sardine, and I regularly contribute to Bitcoin Core.
Hey, I'm Will. I work on Damas, and I used to work on Bitcoin Core a little bit. Probably have 10 to 15 commits. I don't know if that's a lot, but yeah, it's has been an interesting experience in the open source space with Bitcoin. So.
Okay, so I guess first question, and maybe Peter, I'll throw this one to you first. Should we even be contributing to Bitcoin anymore? Is there anything that really needs doing that is an absolute necessity, or is it just going to be icing on top of the cake?
Well, keep in mind, you said should we be contributing to Bitcoin? And Bitcoin Core is not the same thing.
Fair.
So I would say for Bitcoin Core, there are still some unfinished things. I think we should expect Bitcoin Core to continue to get more and more boring as things progress closer and closer to perfection. I think this is not unlike saying, should we continue contributing to LaTeX? You contribute to all the packages around it, but the core of LaTeX hasn't changed in, 3 decades, pretty much? So ideally, we get there. Of course, on the other hand, you get stuff like soft forks and potential upgrades too, and some things we even have hard deadlines. Bitcoin literally ceases to exist in its current form in, 2133 or something, when 32-bit hits overflow. So there's different levels of that.
Yeah, thankfully we have a bit of time to work on that one, so I think we're good.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to start thinking in terms of there's an interesting question, should we keep working on it? But it's actually not that simple, because the way that I look at Bitcoin Core is like an onion. So at the very core is probably stuff we shouldn't touch, like consensus code, the script interpreter. People still touch that. I don't know. It's kind of scary to me. But there's actually a lot of interesting stuff on the outer layers. So for instance, the GUI, right? So I use the GUI as my main wallet, and because I realize, because it's hooked into Bitcoin Core, and I know that the logic being executed, it's directly attached to the UI. So it's the UI is giving some assurances that I'm actually seeing the correct balance, that I don't really have that guarantee from any other system. So I think there's a lot to be contributed to on the outer layers. For instance, in Bitcoin, in the GUI, I would love to see better PSBT editing, because if you start to create a long PSBT, it's you can't actually, if you save it to disk and load it, you can't actually edit it, which is really annoying. You have to start over. So there's all those things just could be better in terms of UX. So my answer to this would be yes, we definitely need to keep working on it, because there's lots of UX stuff to be done to make people to want to actually use the software. But maybe when you get closer to the inner layers, then probably not. You should be much more careful before you consider changing it. So.
Yeah, I guess we should continue fixing bugs and trying to work on new features to fix bugs in upper layers, and trying to build also new features and adapt the code to lower the probability of future bugs, because there is bugs in Bitcoin Core, there has been bugs in Bitcoin Core, there will be bugs in Bitcoin Core, and if we stop contributing to it, it's going to break.
So this is, I guess, maybe a question for the audience that isn't software developers and things like that. But when you guys mention there's bugs in Bitcoin Core, I bet that makes a lot of people a little bit nervous. I guess, just very quickly, what are the types of bugs we're talking about here? Are these just, UI, GUI bugs? Are these very rare edge case type things? Or is there, something more serious kind of going on? And
there's the whole list, depending on what you consider a bug. So I think a good example for the real consensus code is V1 scripting, the scripting that Bitcoin was released with. While Satoshi went and disabled a bunch of opcodes, there were still remaining edge cases where you could go create blocks that can take minutes to go validate. And in certain circumstances, that can be used as an attack. Mostly, it's sort of an accidental thing where it's used as an attack against miners if they allow, like, this is one of the reasons why the filters exist in Bitcoin Core. You actually need them for that, for technical reasons. But it'd be good to go soft fork some of these edge cases out because they can be used as attacks in certain other cases by large miners. And, is that a bug? Well, I would say yes, but it's also something that's very difficult to go fix because you actually have to go and get everyone to agree on, new soft fork rules. And that's more than just a Bitcoin Core thing in theory.
Yeah, much broader.
But I would say like most of the bugs aren't like those level scary bugs. It's just like, oh, like if you put in an empty parameter here, the thing crashes or an error log pops up, which is like bad, but not like you're going to take down the whole Bitcoin network kind of thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
Depends.
Yeah. There are no solutions, only trade-offs.
Keep in mind, too, we've also seen things that were exposed because we changed how we use Bitcoin. The rise of Lightning went and made mempool replacement policy a lot more important because there turned out to be a bunch of edge cases that previously basically didn't matter. But now with things like Lightning, things like transaction pinning matter. And the term transaction pinning, I don't even think it existed before like 2018 or so, even though the problem existed in 2016, but it didn't matter until he invented Lightning.
Yeah, and maybe I can add one more thing, which is sometimes when we introduce new ideas and concepts into Bitcoin Core, like obviously SegWit was like this big change. So it fixed a lot of issues, but sometimes it can introduce like one subtle incentive change, which will like maybe enabled people to like store more data in the witness intersection, like inscription.
What that would
So some people consider that a bug, or some people would say it's like, well, it's fixing so many other issues that it wasn't, that's just a trade-off there. So that's why I think we have to be very careful even when we're adding new things, which seems like we're actually fixing or making like privacy better. We could be inserting like incentive issues, which causes more bugs in the future. So I think we have to be very careful because adding features could be adding bugs as well.
So one thing I guess especially Bitcoin Core is kind of known for is that it's quite a contentious place to try and add code, remove code, just wade into the discussions there. If somebody was interested in wanting, and they were technical, we'll start with the technical side of things. If somebody's interested in contributing, how would you guys recommend getting started? Is it as simple as just write some code, submit a PR, or is there
read code, read the existing codes, read the codes written by other people? Reviewing is going to be hard if you're not familiar already, but you can start testing code and find edge cases and figure out why the person opened this project in the first place. So yeah, getting familiar with the code bases would be the first step.
I would strongly recommend doing analysis. The focus people have on code is, I think, obviously it depends on what you're doing. But if, your dream, if you will, is to go and make changes to Bitcoin protocol, you really got to focus on doing analysis of how that protocol works, how people go use it, and so on. And I think you're much more likely to, if you will, get a career doing that by focusing on the ideas first and making sure you have really good understanding of that stuff and convincing other people that changes should be made. Only then, to get to the point of actually writing any code. And a good example of this is my own check lock time verify, where actual code changes were, I don't know, half a dozen lines of code or something. It's just so tiny, but it was backed by so much analysis working up to that point of saying, we actually need this. Here's what we'll go do. Here's all the stuff that will happen. And I personally would be totally happy if I wasn't the one who actually wrote those 6 lines of code. Like that part really is just a bit of bookkeeping. But like I say, it depends what you're doing. If you want to do GUI stuff, it's a very different story.
I think on a general note, I would say, Bitcoin Core is a much different open source project. Like, so if you're going to it expecting, if you're submitting code and expecting you have a similar result of like contributing to some Node.js library, it's going to be, you're going to be completely winded because you're going to be very disappointed because you're going to be ignored. And so if you want to be effective in Bitcoin Core, I'd say at the very base level, get good at just like open source contribution in general. So maybe just go to other projects. I always say go to the Linux kernel and see like how like they do commit messages and and communication, because the biggest thing is like showing, it's all about trust. You have to get other people to trust you that the code you're submitting is not dumb and they actually trust you to like do good work, because actually reviewing code is very time consuming and people are not going to review your code if they don't trust you. So I just say at the base level, get good at like just get good at a base level at open source contribution, and then have a much higher like. It's going to be much more difficult to contribute to Bitcoin Core. So just keep that in mind. Just get a base level of open source contribution under your belt first.
And to like do that, like most repos and Bitcoin Core has this as well. There's like a contributing doc of like everything you should be doing. There's like issues tagged with like good first issues. Try to like onboard that experience like to make it easier. But yeah, like Bitcoin Core is a different beast compared to any other project. So it is a lot harder to get started.
And to reply to Peter, so obviously I agree that you shouldn't, when I meant look and read the code and check the internals, it's in order to get an actual good understanding of Bitcoin also at a high level, because there's a lot of people like getting a mental model of how Bitcoin works. It's sometimes very different from how it actually works. And for instance, the 5 lines code needed a lot of context, how C-script works, or this kind of stuff. So
I mean, the first thing I did when I learned about Bitcoin and wanted to understand how it worked under the hood was I sat down for a weekend and read the entire code base from one end to the other, taking notes. And, I would still recommend you doing it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to mirror Peter's point on that. Some of the best things you can do is just like read the code, but not only that, but, look at really important pieces of the code. So for instance, when I went into the interpreter C++ and just to see how Bitcoin script work, I'm like, it's really simple and it's really easy. So I spent a weekend just building a Bitcoin script interpreter in C just for fun. So the more things you can do like that and like find, pet projects and like just so you can teach yourself about how Bitcoin works, and you'll be more effective in Bitcoin Core in terms of making improvements because from the get-go, it's just very confusing. There's a lot of moving parts. So just jump in and start playing with it, I think is a good idea.
I also want to point out, for certain types of changes, mempool policy is, I think, a great example. If your dream is you want to go implement certain types of things, you absolutely can contribute to Bitcoin Core, not by contributing to Bitcoin Core, but by just forking it and having a new policy and convincing other people it's a good idea. That's why, full RBF is at like 80% hash power right now, because I forked Bitcoin Core and, played around with some code so that other people would have different policy and opt into it.
Yeah, maybe, I guess if you're a new developer interested in getting familiar with the code base, we now have very good test coverage, which was not the case before. So maybe one way to fast forward would be to change some code and see what breaks. And sometimes it's very unexpected and you can learn a lot from it.
That's a great call out. So I guess let's shift away a little bit from the technical side of things. For people who are maybe non-technical or technical but not, programmers necessarily, are there things that they can actually do that would help make sure that the rest of contributions, code, things like that go a little bit better?
People could always go write documentation. And, and writing documentation is a good way to understand it better too.
There was a really cool, I think it's still a thing. I haven't checked up on it in a while, but the Bitcoin Design Initiative, where they're redoing a lot of the UI on Bitcoin Core on the GUI. So if you're a designer and you want to contribute to that project, sometimes it's a little bit harder to get changes in on that side, because right now Bitcoin Core is very like code focused. There's not a lot of people merging like large like UI design changes, but I think it's really important work, and I think we should be focusing more on that, because I think more people should be running Bitcoin Core as a wallet, because it's like I think it's a great wallet, and it works really well with hardware wallets. So that on the design side, I think we should get more people contributing, because it's really important.
Yes, there's also a bunch of people who don't contribute code, but help testing Bitcoin Core in random architectures and in random situations, which are really helpful to inform the development. For instance, if you're going to add new instructions for ARM to perform the hashes more quickly, you want people to test on random SBCs. If you want to test a release candidate, maybe have a couple mining pool, try running it to see if the get block template didn't get a 20% performance hit, because that would be critical. So yeah, testing is also trying to think about edge cases, or just like trying to break test stuff is interesting.
There's another thing I helped out in the past was like, right before Bitcoin was like only on ClearNet, and then there was like Tor, and like now we have like I2P and CJ, DNS, like all these other things. So that's something you can help out as well. Like people like open PRs, it's like, I need to test this network connectivity stuff, see if it works. If you can learn how to compile Bitcoin Core, which isn't too hard, you can just start, creating like, let's run it on mainnet and see if this stuff breaks as well. And that helps a lot.
I'd also say if you're a therapist and you could help like the maintainers, and like, because they'll be continually rebasing their PRs for years, and it's like kind of mentally very they'll have some issues. So if you're a therapist, you can contribute in that way.
I mean, you joke a little bit, but actually that is a really good question, because I think, contributing to Bitcoin Core, like we've just talked about, is like complicated. There's a lot of edge cases. There's a lot to understand. There's a lot of, ramifications and, potential side effects. How do you guys kind of, especially you guys that are doing a lot more contribution now, like how do you guys kind of stay in that without burning out of it and not just, rage quitting?
By being a weirdo.
Like occasionally I see like someone responding to the PR I had open for like a year, and I'm like, okay, people still care. So just the fact that people still interact with some of the PRs and some of the issues that are interesting to me, it's like gives me a little bit of hope, and it makes me want to kind of give back more. Like one thing that's a PR that's open right now, I think the guy name is 0xB10C, or I can't remember his name, but me and him have been working on tracing at Bitcoin Core, and he has like these PRs that's been open for like 2 years. And I feel really bad, and I feel like maybe I should go back and do some more reviewing of his rebases, because it's hard though, because you lose interest over time. But I think staying engaged is just, even though it's hard, just keep going. And I don't know what the best way to do that is, but it's a hard problem.
Get therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the Defense Legal Fund helps as well a lot, which was set up by Alex Marcus and Jack Dorsey, because I think it was a concern to a lot of contributors that you might randomly get sued for millions.
Billions.
Billions?
The damages in the Craig Wright case against myself and other devs, in theory, they're billions of dollars.
That's ridiculous. And if at the same time other peers in other technical communities hate you, because I don't know, a lot of technical people passionately hate on Bitcoin and Bitcoin contributors, and then you start having movements in the Bitcoin community itself hating on developers. I don't know, maybe we should have better conditions to make sure smart people don't leave and we attract more.
I'll say it's okay to rage quit sometimes too, and just maintain your fork. Like I have for Mutiny, we run something called MutinyNet, which is like a signet with 30-second block time, and people wanted me to implement it a different way, or it's like, this is way too much effort. I'm just gonna maintain this fork, and it works fine. Like it's not that hard to just rebase the changes. It's like 10 lines, so it's okay to be like, okay, this doesn't have to be in core. I can maintain my fork and use it how I want, like somewhere like Libre Relay and stuff like that.
Cool. So you mentioned there, having those legal funds and things like that. Like, are there things that, companies that are in the space using, like obviously they're Bitcoin companies, should they be doing more? Should they be contributing more in terms of whether it's funds or people or time or anything?
I suspect that contributing to the legal fund might turn out to be a lot more important than many other types of contributions. I think we've been very lucky that there haven't been that many legal threats against Bitcoin devs. And if anything, I've been around for a while, and I kind of expected the threats to be a lot more serious. Craig Wright is not really, he's a serious threat in the sense that you do have to respond to a lawsuit, but it's not a serious threat in the sense that his legal case is terrible. Whereas we could have had, legal threats in the form of, for instance, governments going after us for like AML KYC violations. That is a much more serious type of threat, and that's the kind of thing that could still happen. You can't rule it out, and without having funds already in place and, things already set up, you can easily be in a situation where governments do underhanded shit to make sure that you cannot hire your lawyers when they actually go and start suing you and, creating criminal charges against you. So all this stuff needs to be set up, and hopefully we never need it, but there's a good chance we will.
Yeah, so I'm going to repeat myself with the previous question, but Bitcoin companies could help with Bitcoin Core developments by testing the new versions and upgrading more quickly, because as I mentioned, there's bugs, and you can't just tell the world that, hello, your money is broken. So there's bug fixes very often in new releases of Bitcoin Core, and people should just upgrade to the new version, because there's it could help the network, and also helping testing release candidates, because you're not, we need more information. You cut a release candidate, the first one, you don't know really how you tested it. A few individuals come and do various tests, but if companies actually are relying on the software, could do more tests and report, it could be helpful.
So even just having some sort of like, I mean, maybe not formal process or anything, but have specific companies, groups, testers that, are looking at the release candidates, are trying them out, are, testing them with small amounts of money so that, if anything did go wrong, there wasn't an issue.
And like a lot of companies that should just have like a test suite of like, okay, when we call get address, do we get an address? And, all the various things they're doing internally. So you just like, we would do this at a previous company for L&D releases, just like, let's take out the release, make sure all of our test cases pass. And I found multiple bugs like, oh, their taproot ES submission is wrong here. And we, report that back. So you could do the same thing with Bitcoin Core.
Yeah, people do report bugs on release candidates even after some time. So let's lower the probabilities that there is more.
We've only got a couple more minutes, so I guess I'm going to turn the tables just a little bit, and I'm going to ask each of you if you've got a question just to pose to everyone else, because I think this is a really good group, and it's great chance to get some feedback.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what everyone thinks about. Is there a concern of the brain drain just due to the threat of lawsuits, and how does that? Does anyone see it affecting Bitcoin Core development in a negative way, like right now or over time? Like I haven't really been paying too close attention, but that is a concern of mine, is that people are more and more people are going away from the project just because of the threat of lawsuits.
I think that is definitely a concern. And I think as a community, one of the things we can do very wrong here is to overstate that concern. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised some lawyers will hate what I'm about to go say, but it's not that stressful if you look at it from the right perspective, at least with the Craig Wright cases. And I think we have this way of playing that up that can turn off people. Now, on the one hand, I mean, the legal threats are very real. If we didn't respond, we would be totally screwed. That is how the legal system works. But currently, the support we have is exceptionally good. And at least in this case, things have gone quite well. And if you chose to just tune out and ignore it and let the lawyers handle it, you absolutely could do that. On the other hand, if you choose not to, like Greg Maxwell, who spent God knows how much time getting into the weeds of this stuff, you can waste a lot of time on it, but, it is your choice. And at least this time around, it's gone very well. But, like I was saying earlier with AML KYC, maybe next time it is a much more serious type of threat. So I can't rule that out either. But
yeah, I guess different people respond to stress differently. I know that a few people were very affected by it, and maybe it's just less rational and it's emotional. You know that you have good support, but you also have probably, if you have the quality to contribute to Bitcoin Core, you can have other opportunities. You might as well just do something chill instead. And to give at that point, a few developers met a couple of years ago, and the question was asked about making a show of hands about people who would be concerned about taking responsibilities such as merge rights. Most people raise their hands.
I'm surprised too, like we haven't seen the rise of like the anonymous Bitcoin Core dev. Like there's a lot of people who like stepped away, and a lot of people are like, joking on Twitter, like, oh, he'll be back next month under, random name. But that hasn't really happened. So I'm surprised, maybe it will happen soon, or new core devs that come up in this next era will be anonymous instead of like saying their full name. But, we're yet to see.
I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that being anonymous or pseudonymous kind of sucks because you don't get the social interaction in the same way. And if you are pseudonymous, but you show up at like meetings and stuff, that's not realistically going to do you any good legally. I mean, I've been involved in a lawsuit as a plaintiff where, of course, I just hired a private investigator and they quickly figured out who the hell I was suing. I mean, it wasn't hard. Like, these guys are good at what they do, and unless you actually change your lifestyle, they will go find you. And once you change your lifestyle, well, now you can't go sit on stages and go talk to your buddies.
Okay, we got 30 more seconds or so I guess we've got time for like a very quick last one if anybody wants to pop one in. No?
Contribute to Bitcoin Core or Lightning.
Excellent. All right. Actually, give me a last thought there, Ben.
Be anonymous.
Yeah, though. You guys have anything to add?
Yeah, if Bitcoin Core is too intimidating, there's always Core Lightning and other Lightning projects, so you can come help us there.
Okay, cool. Well, listen, thank you guys for listening, and thank you guys for being up here.
Thanks.